Hi, we're going to show you the correct procedure to disassemble and reassemble the RS24/10 Malossi rear buffer for Piaggio. The first operation to be performed is slackening the ferrules using the designated wrenches. When the spring is slack, we can remove the spring guide. Insert the small jaws like this. And position the buffer in the grip, like this. Now, with the 13mm wrench, unscrew the nut that holds the small fork firm. Having done this, remove the small fork and jaws and remove the spring. Now, with a chisel, make the two lids leap up, like this. We reposition the buffer in the grip. Unscrew the screws at the top of the tank. Make the gas leak out by inserting a needle into the hole. Having emptied all the gas, remove the needle and the Seeger seal. Now, using a pair of grippers, lift up the cap. Remove the Seeger seal and take out the washer from its housing, like this. We reposition the buffer in the grip, firmly holding onto the washer so that it doesn't go back into the housing. Using a punch or screwdriver, remove the OR, which must be replaced with a new one before reassembling. Now completely remove the stem. Put the stem in the grip and using a 17mm wrench to unscrew the nut. Take a screwdriver and, pointing it onto the stem, remove the whole block, stacking it onto the screwdriver, like I'm doing, to keep all of the thin plates in the right order. Now remove the drive bush and check if the inner seal needs replacing. Prior to reassembling the bush, grease the seal and the U-shaped bush, like this. Now let's put the bush back onto the stem, taking care not to touch the edge with the seal. Now we can reassemble the whole of the upper block. Let's start with the valve guides. Then we reassemble one thin plate at a time to check if they have to be replaced. Pay attention to this thin plate. If you touch the edge, you'll realize that it's smooth on one side, whereas it has a little flap on the other side. We should reassemble it by turning the smooth part towards the piston, i.e., facing upwards. Since the thin plates are manufactured in pre-stressed steel, should they need to be replaced, you will need to find others in the same material. The piston also has a right way round. On one side, it has large passages, and on the other side, 4 small holes that must be facing upwards. The next thin plate obviously has one side with the little flap and a smooth side. The latter must face towards the piston. Now, let's finish assembling all the thin plates and get to the nut. If you own a torque wrench, calibrate it to 20 newtons. Otherwise, tighten the nut until the piston turns freely. When it no longer turns, tighten it a little more, like this. Now let's go back to the buffer body and put the Seeger back into its housing. We can empty the oil, reposition the buffer in the grip, and with a perforated cap in the middle, made by artisans, we close this part. With a compressed air gun, let's make the tank separator rise up. Remove the Seeger again and, with grippers, remove the separator, like this. Now empty the remaining oil from the buffer. Put the buffer back into the grip again Fill the oil tank up to the brim and pour until the oil comes out from the other part. When you see the oil appear in the other chamber, you'll know that the regulation screw is in fact completely full of oil, and avoid leaving any air inside. Remember to replace the OR of the separator seal. Fill the tank up to the brim again and quickly insert the separator. Push the separator down to 57 millimeters. Take the stem again and separate the valve and piston using the thin plates in order to make all the air come out in the next stage. Position the thin plates like this. Having positioned the thin plates, fill the other part with oil to about this level. Insert the whole of the stem again inside the buffer. Remove the excess oil and, lastly, remove the thin plates. Move the stem up and down to remove all the air. See the bubbles? Lift the stem up as far as possible without letting any oil leak out of the cross holes and push the bush down. Now, removing any excess oil, make the bush descend slowly. Then take a screwdriver and, pressing here, push the bush down to the bottom. Pointing the screwdriver in the previous position to firmly hold the bush, lift up the stem. It's very important to make sure that it still stays in the oil in this part. Should it come out of it all, air would get into the tank. Consequently, if you notice that the oil is going down, top it up straight away. Once the stem has fully come up, you can remove the excess oil and make the OR and washer descend. Take a screwdriver and push, like this, to make the OR enter its housing. Now, carefully clean up the excess oil using a compressed air gun. Now put the Seeger back into its housing. After having changed the OR of the cap, insert it into the tank, pushing it down with your fingers. Now put the elastic ring back into its housing and push the stem down. This will help us to check things in a second. Take a compressed air gun or a cylinder of nitrogen gas and with pressure at 6 or 7 bars, pressurize the buffer. If the stem rises up, the job has been carried out correctly. It's very important to remove the needle keeping the gun pressurized. Now, reassemble the screw of the cap. Lower the lid and insert it into its housing using a hammer. Also, position the lid of the tank like this. We can now reassemble the spring and spring guide. Tighten the calibration screws again. And to finish, reassemble the small fork. Tighten the screw with a 17mm torque wrench if possible. The job's now done. Thank you for your attention.